All right, good evening. So tonight I'm going to be presenting my report on, or my presentation of fitness education and exercise prescription. Overall, I want to just give a little bit of background about myself. Um, so, as I've stated before, I am currently I'm a firefighter, advanced EMT for Mason Valley Fire Protection District, and a lot of what I've been focusing on recently has been tactical athletes and what we can do to help improve our performance. Recently we've been having several fires, so it's just something to help focus with that. With that said, the volunteer that I used in this video was my wife. Um, she has been an awesome support for me and has created, just been a wonderful help. But what I wanted to show with this is that I designed a workout plan using some of the things that I think are more beneficial towards functional or tactical athletes, firefighters, law enforcement, military personnel, EMS personnel, any kind of first responder, anybody that wears a fixed load upon their body, be that a ballistic vest for law enforcement or military personnel, or for firefighters, it would be the SCBA packs or wildland packs, depending on what kind of assignment we're on. So let's get into it. First thing that I want to note is that we did her health and movement assessment. We used the functional movement screen. As you can remember, this is the one where we have the 48-inch board with the 48-inch dowel. They perform a deep squat, a lunge, a push-up, and then they also perform the shoulder clearing test and the trunk clearing test, both the flexion and function and extension of that. And basically and I'm sorry, and also the hurdle step. So with those in mind, that's a lot of the activities that you would see any kind of tactical athlete doing it. I mean, we're going to be in a deep squat. For example, if I make entry into a structure fire, I might have to be in a deep squat in order to get down low into the fire. I might end up on my knees, or I might be doing a deep squat to lift a patient up off the ground. Lunges, officers may be using a lunge to have better stability when they're making shot placement. Same with soldiers. When it comes to the push-up, we may be pushing up off the ground. We may have to get up in a hurry off the ground, and or we may be on an entrapment in a structure fire, and the only way we have out is to basically push up off the ground and get out of the building. Several different factors can play into that. So what I noted with my wife and my volunteer is that she had issues with the deep squat. She had an inability to maintain a neutral spine. Just every time that she would try to go down to that squat, she would bend forward, breaking that plane to maintain that neutral spine. When she did the lunge, it was the same thing. She kept moving forward. She was also unable to completely perform the test. So in other words, her posterior knee was not able to actually touch down on the lunge, and then the knee on her anterior foot that was leading the lunge, her knee was not in front of the foot. In the push-up, she couldn't even perform a push-up. In that test, we start at the chin with females, then go to the clavicle, and then eventually to the shoulders, and she was unable to perform that without having to use some hip flexion. So one of the things that I found with this functional movement screen, like I said, is that it is actually very beneficial it's clinically beneficial for us to look at when we are dealing with tactical athletes or the general populace even. These are activities of daily living, if you think about it as well. If you're going to pick your kid up, depending on how old your kid is, obviously, if you have a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old and you go down to pick them up, or even 6, 7, or 8-year-old, They might come running at your arms. You might come break down and do a deep squat as they come and run at you. Um, you might have to complete a lunge to pick up something that your child dropped. I mean, you want to make sure that you are working on that hurdle step. You might be performing a hurdle step in order to step up onto a patio deck or into a set of stairs. I mean, granted, a lot of hurdles are not that big, but if you think about it, there are some steps out there that could be that size. Um, the push-up, I mean, that's just an activity that is mainly, it involves our entire core. We might be just doing that just to get up off the ground after a long day. Um, shoulder mobility, I mean, we're always going to need to look at our shoulder mobility. You might have to throw something high up, maybe put a tent away in your garage and you might hurt your shoulder. Or you might, be grasping a line as you go out fishing. You might grasp a line for the boat and, you have to work your shoulder to grab that line. It does help to identify asymmetries in movement. So if say that, on our right-handed side, we have, normal range of motion, we're able to completely flex and extend and internally rotate and externally rotate our shoulder. But on the right side, we can only bring it up. We can only flex to about this. Maybe we can only externally rotate to about this. That's going to help us define just how much movement, range of motion that we have in our body there. One of the other things that we have to look at is what other kind of health benefits do we have with this. In Bessar, Stanek, Dodd, and Bagali, in their article, they looked at the overall efficacy of the functional movement screen and how it relates to just athletes in general. With that in mind, what are we looking for? We're looking to make sure that our athletes stay in top physical performance. We are looking to make sure that they maintain good conditioning while they are in season training, and that also during the off season that they're not under training their bodies or detraining their bodies as well. And what the functional movement screen can do is give us a good baseline to go off of, and then we can take that and say, okay, so last season you did this, and this season we're having some issues with this. Let's go ahead and get you focused on working that out, especially say with the shoulder mobility for pitchers. Right now it's currently summertime now, but look at pitchers and the shoulder mobility, that rotation that they have to pitch the ball. You're definitely going to want to focus on that, and that's where this functional movement screen can come in handy. Moving on. With my client, one of her main goals, let me kind of move this camera screen so you guys get a better view of that. There we go. So one of my client's main goals, my wife's main goals, was to improve her muscular strength after we looked at her functional movement screen and everything that was going on with her at that time. And this is something that her and I have discussed for many, many years now, is that she has always wanted to improve her muscular strength. So we decided at this point, after looking at the functional movement screen, to work on that. So I went and we did an 8-week periodization, because that gives us a good amount of time in that 8 weeks to truly focus on her training. And then in that time, we can see if we can add some additional strength to her, but at the same time, we're not overtraining her as well. In say a 3-month period where she might not feel as comfortable, she might end up fatiguing and injuring herself. So what I looked at with her was resistance exercises, and using a lot of resistance exercises. I did add a day of aerobic and body weight into that, into her exercise resistance, just because that gave her body time to recuperate from the heavy resistance that was in it. Nothing extremely bad, nothing. I kept it very simple. I realized that I went by the KISS principle, and I made sure that it was a very simple, easily replicated workout, something that we can go back and look at and see how we can either add on to or need to take away from, such as with her bench press. I mean, if we're sitting there and we're doing a flat barbell bench press and she feels that she's not motivated enough in order for that, or not, I'm sorry, not motivated enough, but that she isn't able to complete all the repetitions, maybe we drop it down a little bit until she is able to complete those repetitions, or reduce the weight so she is able to complete, say, 3 sets of 15 reps. In the first month, I selected 4 days for that way it gave her an extra rest day in between, and then we kind of, depending on the schedule, we had either a resistance day or the aerobic day. In the second month, I added an additional day of resistance training, and that was just so we could actually get some more muscular strength built up, and we could get not some hypertrophy of muscle, but just some additional strength into her system. Some of the things that I looked at, again, were fitness versus fatigue. The 8 weeks, that gives us a good timeline to go by. But I was concerned with higher intensity workouts for her, just making sure that everything that she had was not going to cause her a significant amount of pain after workout. But I also realized that it's also helping her train for a state of preparedness, which in my world of being a firefighter and in tactical athletes, that's the main goal we're looking at, is always, making sure that we are trained for that state of preparedness, because we never know when something might go on. I could get called out at 2 o'clock this morning for a structure fire or a wildland fire, and I have to make sure that my body is in decent preparedness in order for that. And that is something that I'm not struggling with, but that I'm having a little bit more difficulty with, just because I'm breaking in a new set of boots, but I'm also throwing more line and everything. And with the heat that we've had recently, it's been a kind of a struggle. I have not prepared myself over the winter for that. So moving on from that, our next, I brought in a couple of videos here. These were a couple of exercises that I had my wife perform. For the upper body, what I had her perform was a simple, very simple bend over row using kettlebells. I like to use the kettlebells because it gives kind of a more uneven load versus having the dumbbells in your hand. It just allows for a better, to me, it allows for a more realistic version of training. In the lower body, we chose to do a step up, similar to the hurdle step, had her step up onto a smaller platform, made sure that she placed her feet right and then brought them down correctly. But at the same time, we also had resistance, again, using the kettlebells. Both of those were, if you watch the videos, they're very informative and show a good example of what to use for both the upper body and lower body workout. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up was some Bible verses that came with talking about physical training. And I mean, when we think about it, we are God's creation. We are God's people. We are created in His image as well. And one of the things that we have to remember is that we cannot devalue our worth in God, and devalue our worth to God, for that matter. So in 1 Timothy 4, in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 8, one of the main quote from here is, "For physical training is of some value, but godliness has value for all things, holding present for both the present life and the life to come." And the way I look at that is that, no matter what, we are in there for God. And that He is overall going to take care of us. In Revelation 14:12, it's patient endurance. We always have to look for that endurance. It doesn't matter what we're doing, we need to endure, and we will endure, no matter what. We are God's people, and we will endure. And finally, in 1 Corinthians 10:31, whether you eat, drink, or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Because remember, we are created in His image. With that, I'm going to close us out, and